set us up for failure right from the start and take our children away. And this is one of the perfect examples of our children being taken away.
Tonight, the jury has reached a verdict in the trial of Raymond Cormier.
Where can they go to get a better life, to get away from violence?
Tonight, more truths on what Inuk women face in the hearings of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. And the story of a mom who took to Twitter in the hopes of reuniting her family. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. There's a verdict in the second-degree murder trial of Raymond Cormier. Cormier was accused of killing Tina Fontaine, whose body was pulled from the Red River in Winnipeg in 2014. Late this afternoon, the jury found Cormier not guilty. Brittany Hobson has been following the story, and she joins us in studio now. Brittany, I understand it was a packed courtroom as the verdict was read out. What was the reaction inside?
Well, it was very emotional, and you could feel it in the courtroom. Valentina Duck, who's Tina's birth mother, exited the courtroom as soon as the verdict came down, and she began swearing at Cormier and continued swearing down the hallways and exited the law courts, and we do have some visuals of that.
Are you guys happy with the jury, what they say?
Also in court was Thelma Favel, who is Tina's great aunt and primary caregiver, and she's been in court for most of the past 3 weeks. And she collapsed when the verdict was read and broke into tears, and also had some choice words to say to Cormier, and family and friends surrounded her, and a prayer was said and a moment of silence was said as well.
After the verdict was read out and everybody cleared out, I understand there were some emotions and some emotions outside as well.
Yeah, so many Indigenous leaders in Manitoba gathered outside the steps on the law courts and addressed media and talked about the outcome of the verdict and what that meant. And Sheila North, MKO Grand Chief, spoke about how the systems essentially failed Tina, and we do have some visuals of that as well.
The systems, everything that was involved in Tina's life failed her. We've all failed her. We as a nation need to do better for our young people, all of us. Indigenous people, especially for our young people. This is a message to them that is probably discouraging, saying that it's okay to kill our Indigenous young people. It is not okay. And it might not be this accused person that took her life, but someone took her life. That fact remains, and we must get to the bottom of it.
We are continually marginalized. We live in third world conditions. You set us up for failure right from the start and take our children away. And this is one of the perfect examples of our children being taken away and being taken.
And Brittany, there are a number of rallies being planned for tomorrow across the country, one here in Winnipeg. What can you tell us about that one?
So it's going to start at 10:30, start from the law courts, and then people are going to walk to the Forks, and it's really just to honor Tina's life.
Brittany, appreciate you taking the time to explain what happened here today for us.
Thank you.
We'll go to Rankin Inlet, Nunavut now, where the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls is wrapping up another set of hearings. Rankin Inlet is in a huge region populated by about 10,000 people, but it's the only place with a shelter for women and children. APTN's Tamara Pimentel now with a healthcare worker who says more support is desperately needed.
Rankin Inlet is the gateway to the Kivalliq region in Nunavut, and it's the only community that has a shelter in the Kivalliq for women to escape violence. Esther Powell is a healthcare worker in the community. She also works for the Inquiry. She says the shelter here is only a Band-Aid solution.
We don't have shelters in the communities. We don't have safe shelters for men or for women or for children in any of the communities except for Rankin.
Women and families that fly in from other communities can only stay for 2 weeks. When the Rankin shelter is full, they are sent to Iqaluit, where they are housed with other families.
With 50% housing shortage in all of Nunavut, it's challenging. Like, where can they go to get a better life, to get away from violence, to get away from the fear, to get their children in safe home?
As the killick burned on the final day of the inquiry in Rankin Inlet, more stories were told of family and domestic violence. The family of Sylvia Lyle spoke first. She was strangled to death by her common-law spouse in Iqaluit in 2004. Her son, Jake O'Ritchie, was only 9 years old. For the first time, he expressed how his mother's death impacted his life.
What Patrick Anubluk has did to my mother has in fact impacted me in the worst way, because for a little while I became that type of person. I actually do have a charge. I've been charged for assault towards my ex-fiancée.
The inquiry wraps up today, but the trauma in the territory will continue. That trauma, Powell says, can only be healed with acknowledgement.
The worst thing that you can do is stay quiet. The best thing to do is have absolutely no shame in what's going on. Speak out, reach out, and all in all, just don't ever be afraid.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Rankin Inlet.
Award-winning songstress Suzanne Glukark is a survivor of sexual abuse. When she was 8 years old, a family friend abused her and took pictures of her naked. She was the last speaker at the inquiry, and she named her abuser.
No one can guarantee that he's not watching right now, taking morbid pleasure in watching this. But you didn't win. Norman Ford, you didn't win. Not now, not ever. And no excuse forgives your actions. Now the community knows and what you've done. This room could be filled by your victims alone. So many innocent children in this community alone. Norman Ford, Atia Okakpara.
Emotional testimony. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll continue our Perspective series on the child welfare system. Here's a look at Friday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. Sunny and 0 in Halifax, +1 under the sun in Fredericton. A snowy -13 in Inuk, -10 in La Grande. Snowy day across much of Quebec, -3 in Chibougamau, +3 in Montreal. Warmer temperatures in southern Ontario, 13 in Windsor, rain, and +12 in Toronto. -1 in Wawa and Thunder Bay, 6 below in Sioux Lookout. Sunny in northern Manitoba, -22 in Churchill. -7 on Friday in Winnipeg, -10 in Dauphin. Over to Saskatchewan, -10 in Swift Current, Saskatoon, and North Battleford. -8 in Meadow Lake, Stony Rapids, and Uranium City. Welcome back. Today we continue with the story of Helena Wood. Family violence and alcohol was impacting her children, so much so that in 2010 her 15-year-old daughter Cassandra died by suicide. Helena fled with her remaining children but continued to use alcohol and lost her children to the state. Now we follow her journey to rebuild her life, and as Brittany Hobson and Karen Pugliese report, the path is not an easy one.
I'm not going to go through this again. I'm not going to lose another daughter, another child because of him. He doesn't matter. He doesn't matter to me. What matters is my kids' future. Give them the best life I could possibly give them.
In February 2010, Helena Wood's 15-year-old daughter, Cassandra Wood, died by suicide. Helena believes witnessing years of domestic violence in the home was too much for Cassandra. In August, 6 months after Cassandra's death, Helena fled to Winnipeg with her kids, eventually settling in Steinbach, where she had to face some harsh realities.
I regret of knowing her. I wish I knew her, even though she was reaching out to me, but I turned her away because of all the domestic violence. I was too much concentrating on my abuse, trying to survive every day. How am I going to cope?
She drank to deal with the abuse and continued to drink to deal with her daughter's death. It numbed her feelings. It also cost her children. Jewel and Austin were trying to cope with the death of their sister. Their relationship with Helena began to deteriorate because of her drinking. She contacted CFS hoping to get mental health services for her kids. The agency responded by apprehending them. Jewel went back to St. Teresa Point to live with her father, and Austin was placed in a different home. For Helena, that was her rock bottom. She wanted her kids back, and there was only one way: by getting clean and taking back control of her life.
I went to the emergency because I wanted to quit out on my own, but I knew I couldn't because my body. And then I went to the crisis stabilization unit over there too.
Doctors told Helena symptoms from withdrawal could be fatal if she quit cold turkey.
The prayers.
It's been 8 years since Helena left the community. She has been sober for nearly 2 years. Like many who recover, she needed support. She made new friends who did not drink, and she rediscovered her faith.
I go to church, and I go to a Bible study group. Every Wednesday, I call them my family, but those are my friends. So I go there and try to go find crusades. I love crusades. I try to go there when I can. That's where my help is. And that's how I finally healed.
Both Jewel and Austin have since aged out of the child welfare system. 2 years ago, Jewel gave birth to Helena's first grandchild, a baby boy named Anthony. Last summer, Jewel and Anthony moved to Steinbach to live with Helena. Shortly after, Austin followed. It took 6 years, but finally Helena had her family back. But that was not an end. She needed to focus on staying clean and in control.
There's times that I want to quit because it's exhausting at times. So, and I'm like, when I'm time like that, I look at my kids. I have to go up for these children. Even my grandson, look at him. Who's going to take care of him? Right? And I have to make it a safer, brighter future for him. She was chubby because she was sick that time.
Maxine Schindler knows the family. She watched as Helena worked on getting clean and rebuilding her life.
She can look her kids in the face and never be ashamed because she did what she could do, and she did it to the best of her ability, and she never quit.
Shame, regret, and past mistakes. Helena had them, yet she is hiding nothing. In Steinbach, many Indigenous foster kids are being placed in non-Indigenous homes. Helena saw this and decided to team up with the Steinbach Arts Council to facilitate workshops on traditional Aboriginal culture. She invited foster families and members from the community to a tea and bannock event last fall. It is here where she spoke openly about Cassandra's death.
I think it was 14 when she made it. So her name was Cassandra. So she was my oldest, but she passed away already. So
she wants to tell people about her losses and what she has learned from her past. She hopes the classes can keep kids connected to their culture.
I know what goes on in the system, and I see a lot of foster kids in here, and they're like lost, and there's nothing here, and they're just, what are they going to learn? They need to learn. They need a sense of belonging.
This is all volunteer work. Physical pain from the beatings prevents her from working full time. She has chronic back pain and cannot stand for long periods of time, but she longs for more.
I want to be a therapist. I want to go back to school to be a therapist. That's my next step.
Judy Clausen, a cousin, sheltered Helena and her kids when they first arrived in Steinbach. She sees Helena's journey as a story of redemption and victory.
To see her still standing there, still trying to, take care of her kids, to still be standing, it's quite an accomplishment.
Helena wants to educate others about domestic violence. Part of that includes honoring Cassandra's life and what it could have been.
What do you think she would be doing if she was still here?
I'll probably, I don't know how many grandchildren I would have had. Yeah, I wonder how many grandchildren I would have had. Probably most dead, and then would she be married by now, and
Back in St. Teresa Point, Helena stands near the spot where Cassandra's body was found 8 years ago. She has visited the site a handful of times since Cassandra's death. But this time it is different. This time she is ready to move forward.
I have accepted it, but now facing it is very hard. And I wasn't ready before, but now I am.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thousands of parents are fighting every day to get their children out of foster care, but it's usually a secret process between them and the agencies involved. But one mom is challenging that way of doing things, risking her freedom to tell a story about a system she says failed her. Kathleen Martins has more.
My name is, I'm originally from, but I grew up in all my life, and I moved 9 years ago.
This is Twitter Mom. That's the nickname we've given her because of these messages she's tweeting out. She's posting details of her life, pictures of her children, their names, and their ages. As you see here, she has posted pictures of her home and business.
I'd met with an elder once, and he had told me to share my story in the open. And from there I went forward and I started to share my story.
Here's one of those tweets. I want my story to be an example of what is happening, not just with me, but with hundreds of thousands of parents. Not every child in care is there because the system worked properly. And not only that, but the system itself does great harm to children. This should be acknowledged.
Well, I feel as if I'm able to be a voice on Twitter because on Twitter I have a huge audience who's really paying attention to the issue.
But not everyone is happy with her making this public. What she's doing, showing her face and the faces of her children, is illegal because her children are still in foster care. Twitter Mom can be fined and spend years in jail for violating the law.
You'll see rules that talk more about no one shall make public, as opposed to no one will publish in any newspaper, radio station, or TV broadcasts.
Jonathan Croft is a media lawyer. He helps reporters figure out how to tell these stories without ending up behind bars.
Well, what do you think a judge is going to do with this? If it says press, does that include Facebook? And that's why reporting can be sometimes a little bit harrowing.
That's why we have to blur Twitter Mom's face and can't tell you her real name. But she's not letting that stop her. Here is her story in tweets. I am 34. I have been fighting to get my children returned back for 10 years. She says she was 16 when she had her oldest son and continued in school. Child welfare tried to get involved then, but her grandmother pushed them away. A second child followed. She writes, "But this is hard to admit. The dad was violent towards me, and it got worse as time went on. I was trying to hold everything together for my kids, and because it was my son's dad, I wanted it to work out. I became pregnant again, and I had my third son at the age of 24. She says there was abuse aimed at her. Then one day the school called to say her son was hurt. She took him to the hospital. She thought he had been hurt at school. Police got involved. They told her she was under arrest and accused her of hurting her son, which she denied over and over. She tweets, "After 11 hours, they let me go. I called my mum from the first payphone I could find. She was crying. My mum told me police and CFS workers wearing medical gloves came and took the 2 boys. Her children were taken by social workers. She was only told after that her partner had hurt her son. She cut off contact with the man and says she has not seen or heard from him. She has had 3 home assessments since." She tweets, "My kids were apprehended in 2007. I saw one 3 times in 2008, then in 2010. I saw another one in 2009. I didn't see the other one until 2010. The eldest has since aged out of the system and moved back home. Officials tell us and families the law is there to protect the identities of children. But Twitter Mom says it has silenced her and helped cover up a system that should be held accountable for the decisions it makes."
And I feel that I'm a voice for a lot of women who can't speak.
Kathleen Martins, APTN News, Winnipeg.
It wasn't the outcome we were hoping for, but the Olympic women's hockey team has taken home silver. More on that after the break. Here's the rest of Friday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. -1 in Grand Prairie, Peace River, and Fort McMurray. -2 in Edmonton and Lethbridge. Sunny and 7 below in Medicine Hat. A wet day on the west coast, +2 in Vancouver and Campbell River. Snow and +3 in Bella Coola. Rain and 5 above in Prince Rupert, +3 in Smithers. Another mild day across Yukon, -5 in Mayo, -6 in Whitehorse. Not too bad in parts of NWT, -4 in Fort Liard, -5 in Trout Lake and Wrigley. Colville Lake at -8, -14 in Paulatuck on Friday. Not much relief from the cold in sight for Nunavut. -27 in Baker Lake, -29 in Repulse Bay, -31 in Igloolik and Joe Haven, -32 in Resolute. Welcome back. Canada's winning streak in Olympic women's hockey is over. After 4 straight gold medals, they lost to the U.S. in a 3-2 shootout. It was a nail-biter, tied 2-2 after 3 periods and overtime. In the ensuing shootout, first in women's Olympic hockey, American Jocelyn Lamoureux-Davidson broke the tie against veteran Canadian netminder Shannon Zabideau. Bridget Lacquette and Jocelyn Larocque will wear the silver medal for Canada in the closing ceremonies. Too bad. Congratulations still, silver's good. That is your APTN National News for this Thursday. For the latest on the verdict of Raymond Cormier, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. We'll see you back here tomorrow.